So along this side of my bed, you can see this is where all of my peppers are planted. And there's not a whole lot going on. Most of them are still fairly small, but this one is producing a pepper. This is the Big Bertha pepper, which I've never grown before. It's more like a bell pepper. Most of these plants, like this one right here, is California Wonder. It'll get big and produce a lot of fruit. It's just not producing a lot right now. Some of the bigger plants, like the shishito, are finally big enough to support fruit, and you can see it has one little pepper on it. So I'm pretty excited for that one. I'll definitely be saving seeds on it. This Tabasco is actually bushing out quite a bit. But like I said, the Tabascos are misleading because they look small and then all of a sudden they shoot up and be one of the most prolific peppers. This one has a pepper on it. This is a mystery pepper, but by the shape of it, I'm gonna guess that this is probably a spicy pepper. And then this is another mystery pepper. Now this one's really small. It's producing flowers. I'm gonna pick these flowers off because I want it to grow taller so it can support plant flowers and fruit before I let it get that big. And then Serrano and Cayennes are getting tall. They're very, very tall and thin. This one, you can't tell from the video, but it's over 2 feet tall. And it's just starting to bush out at the bottom. So I'm confident as soon as it starts putting on peppers, it is going to produce quite a bit of fruit and do really well this year. So my main focus was letting my peppers get tall and bush out. They're only about a foot apart, so they can all kind of lean on each other for support as they grow. And so here's kind of the bed right there. And you can see what all is growing in it. Over here I have all my potatoes that I planted. You can see there's still some lettuce and some kale growing inside of the beds too, but this is mostly potatoes. And the spaces that you see further apart between the potatoes, like here, is where the plant started dying back, so I went ahead and harvest that plant. We've had a fire ant problem and they're definitely trying to make their way and burrow through our potato tubers. The reason that I went ahead and mulched these instead of adding more dirt is because a lot of the potatoes are just below the surface. So if I move back the mulch and move back the dirt, you can see potatoes are producing just right below the surface of our soil. And that's why I decided to, and look at this, see that? This is the potato I planted. And that's why I decided to go ahead and cover it with mulch, because I didn't want the dirt, especially if we have heavy rain, because it is April, I didn't want the dirt pushing back, but I don't think the potatoes are going to produce any higher up the plant, even if I cover them with more dirt, especially since it won't be too much longer before these plants are starting to flower. So I went ahead and mulched around it to protect those potatoes from becoming green, and that's when the sun shines down on them and they start getting that green color. You can't eat those, so I try to keep them covered. At least this way I know that if we don't have enough rain, the plants will be protected from the hot sun, and it'll also protect the soil. So it's really no big deal. When I'm ready to harvest, I'll just move this mulch back, grab a shovel or pull up the plant, and it'll just come right out. The potatoes are so close to the surface, it works out really well. And so you see there's all these potato plants still in here, but right over here there's a little potato plant because one of mine died, so I decided to plug in another plant and see what happens. It's probably too hot for any more potato tubers, but at the end of the day, why not try to grow them? I already started all of these potato starts, and some just didn't get in the ground on time. And so in this space, I thought about planting more potato tubers. I might just put the potatoes into the ground and go from there. But as these potatoes all start to ripen, I think I'm going to turn this entire bed right here into a tomatillo bed. So tomatillos grow a lot like tomatoes, and they produce little fine hairs and great fruit, so I can bury them deep and get a good root structure on them. They, unlike tomatoes, they continue to thrive and produce fruit even through 90-degree weather, which I really enjoy about them. So they're just perfect for the hottest days of our summer. And you can see where I'm just subtly pulling some of the plants that aren't supposed to be in here out, because little things do pop up. Look at that, poison ivy. You definitely need to get some gloves and get that bad boy out before it gets big. And then here's just some lettuce that managed to hold on somehow and is still producing some, even though we're reaching 89-degree days and higher. We're waiting, hopefully we get another chip drop soon, because we've used pretty much all the mulch that we have. We have mulched in all of the beds that need to be mulched in, and then some, because we've added more beds. We've mulched in most of this pathway. This little bucket actually has a little oak tree growing in it. All of this, we have this, which actually has way too much topsoil in it, and I need to move that topsoil. But you can kind of see the outline right here of where the next garden bed's going to go. I've never used a tractor to move the mulch before. We've always done it by hand, but this time we decided to use the tractor, and let me tell you, it made quick work of everything. Look at that fennel. It is just taking over. I definitely think it's time to harvest that. So with all of our tomatoes producing so much, I just wanted to show off some of the tomatoes at the small stage, because we're just in late April. It's not even May yet. And this is our lemon boy, and look how good that is. It's swollen up just a little bit more. These are going to be pretty good sized tomatoes. Since I didn't really put in the effort to start tomatoes this year, I bought all these plant starts, and I bought a variety so that we could have all different kinds, because my son really likes tomatoes, but he won't eat store-bought tomatoes. So it was definitely worth the investment. So here we have our lemon boy that's already producing the larger fruit. This is a bobcat tomato. It's not really doing anything. It's a determinate variety, but I've never grown it before, so I'm not sure exactly how big it'll get or when it'll produce fruit. So I'm not gonna call it a dud yet. I'm just gonna wait and see exactly what happens. This is a Sweet 100. It's a pretty common hybrid variety. The fruit are small and sweet. They're fun cherry tomatoes to pick. They're vigorous, and they're already doing pretty well. You can see 3 tomatoes up here, and then I noticed today that there are 2 more down here that are producing. We have a little bit of yellowing down here at the bottom of the plant, which I'm just gonna pop off, and that's because we've had a lot of rain. And look at that, accidentally popped off one of the fruit. But overall they're doing very well. This will turn into a really nice red tomato, and that'll be great and lovely, and they'll just be able to come and pick them. Cherokee Purple is a pretty well-known heirloom tomato. It's one of my favorites. Sometimes they can be more susceptible, to diseases than other plants, but that's okay. This plant will get pretty good size, and I'll let it produce fruit. It'll produce a beautiful tomato. This shows more of a red tomato, but it gets like a greenish purple top on it. It's really cool. It's more of a savory tomato taste. It's not extremely sweet, and I just really like it for cooking and for fresh eating. This is a Thunderbird tomato. This is what the picture on the tag looks like. This is another one that I've never heard of, let alone grown before. It says an improved quality, high-yielding, hot-set, determinate round variety with a strong plant and good disease resistance. Fruits are extra large in size, very firm, and good shelf life. So we'll see what happens, but it already has fruit setting on it over the last week, and it seems to be pretty healthy. Once again, it had some yellowing of the leaves down here, which I'm just gonna pinch off. And again, these are the leaves that are close to the bottom of the soil where it's been raining, especially last night and this morning. So I'm not that worried about it. It's all very common for the ones at the bottom to get diseased, but everywhere else it looks so healthy. I'm just gonna guess that a lot of the yellowing on some of the plants is from the intense amount of rain that's been coming in short spurts. So instead of just getting a couple of inches of rain over a period of time, we'll get a couple inches of rain in a matter of a couple of hours, and it's just drenching these tomatoes. So I think that's what's kind of yellowing them up just a little bit. And then over here, we went ahead today and planted another fig plant, so I'm hoping that it'll do pretty well. The new growth is where they usually, where I've noticed that they produce fruit, and so that's kind of what's going on with this fig over here. All of the new growth from this year has fruit growing on it. Let me see, I know I have some more on here somewhere. There's another fig. So these are really cool plants, but the other cool thing about figs is that you can harvest the leaves and dehydrate them and make tea out of it, and I'll probably do that. But right now, since the plant's focusing on putting on fruit, I do not want to harvest too many of these leaves. I want to let it have as much growth as it can, and when winter hits, before the leaves fall off, because on our fig plants, leaves always fall off in winter, I'll harvest all of these leaves that I can and dehydrate them and make a green tea out of them. But in the meantime, I'll just let the plant produce all these delicious fruits, and that'll be pretty exciting. Another thing that we're getting a ton of the last couple of days are blackberries. You can see most of these are red. That's because we've harvested. I've harvested twice today. So we're in that season where they're just continuing to produce. I will say, if you're someone that's new to growing blackberries, make sure you lift up the canes and look underneath them, because you can miss berries very easily. You can see there's some hiding in here. They're just everywhere. So you never know where they're going to produce fruit. And I always tell the kids to make sure you walk all the way around all of the berries from every angle and try to harvest everything, because once they start getting to the point where they taste like they're fermenting on the plant, it's not quite as pleasant. If you're gonna produce preservatives out of them, I would pick them a little sooner when they're not fully ripe, and that's when the whole berry looks closer to this color instead of really deep dark purple or black, because they get too sweet once you add sugar to them. If you're producing jelly, you might want to let them get a little more ripe, but we have a lot of birds, especially mockingbirds, that love eating these berries. So if we're not using them for fresh eating, we're okay with picking them a little sooner. That helps us get them before the birds get them, on top of not making our preservatives or pie fillings way too sweet. You can see these are pretty close to where we would pick them for preservatives, and then we pick them when they're much darker whenever we're using them for fresh eating. Another thing that I think is really, really cool that I want to show is all of these little powder puff balls on my lettuce plant. This is where the seeds are. So you just have to pull the little puffs out of here, and at the bottom of them, look at that. All those little black dots are seeds. How cool is that? It's one of my favorite things about lettuce. It reminds me of wish flowers, showing off wish flowers to the kids, and they just love picking some of the little puffballs out and just blowing it into the garden. So we'll have a lot of random lettuce just seeded everywhere, and that's okay with me. Now I'm walking around the side of the garden bed. There is so much to harvest right now. We have all of this drying out. This is our cilantro. It's producing beautiful coriander seeds for us. They always bolt and produce seed during the warmer months. So during the cold months, we get lots of fresh cilantro. During the summer months, you can still eat the flowers, seeds, and everything, whether or not they're green. And then when they turn brown, you can store them. So you can see where these are yellowing. That's because they're getting ready to turn brown and harden. And you can either use those to reseed your garden or use them as a spice in your cooking, which is really amazing. One of my favorite things to do. And you can see the cilantro is just kind of growing all in here with the blackberries and the fennel. They all grow right up against each other. And the fennel is doing amazing. Here, Florence fennel, instead of being a bulb that you just harvest once, it will become a perennial. It produces seeds, and it spreads through cuttings from the bulb. and roots, so it just takes over everything. You can see how beautiful and big this fennel is. There's a lot of grass underneath it trying to come through, but the fennel always wins out, and you can see what I'm talking about with the grass and then all of these bulbs. I've only ever planted 2 or 3 fennel in my entire garden. All of this fennel you see comes from one plant that has seeded and spread through bulbs, and that we've continued to propagate over the last few years. So if you can only afford 1 or 2 high quality fennel plants and you live in a fairly warm climate, you can have fennel forever, which is amazing. And then you can see all of this chard growing, and I'm actually going to start harvesting a lot of this probably today or tomorrow. And then this is one of the original fennel plants that all of these fennel came from, and you can see how this one already has 3 bulbs off of one plant coming up from the roots. You can harvest 2 of these bulbs and leave the rest. The entire plant is edible, and I just absolutely love that about the fennel. And the one last thing I wanted to show real quick is my Juliet tomatoes. These tomatoes are absolutely wonderful. They were the first tomato to start producing. You can tell by this tomato, it's going to be the first one to ripen. Again, I just bought this plant start. It's just a really lovely grape tomato. Because it's born on trellises, but they don't all ripen at the same time, we're gonna have to individually pick these fruits off the trellis, but you can see just how much is already producing this early in the year. Keep in mind, it's not even May, so it's pretty amazing to start getting some fruit on the vine all the way around. Just absolutely wonderful. I mean, this takes my breath away. I think this Juliet tomatoes are something that we are going to grow indefinitely. It's definitely one of our favorites. So there's still going to be so much changing over the next couple weeks, but I knew it would be about a week before I'd even see the garden again. So I just wanted to show some of my favorite things happening out here. Because I know it's going to look different. I'll probably have ripening Juliet tomatoes, or maybe they'll have already been harvested by my siblings by the time I get back. And all these beans next week we're going to be trellising, because they're going to vine up over this whole entire space to where that other green grass is. That's where we're going to run the trellis to, about 4 foot wide, and I'm really excited for that. So I just want to say thank you guys for checking out my video. There's so much going on already. Everything's growing wildly, and we haven't even gotten into the summer months yet, so I'm pretty excited about what's to come.